Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Today is December 4th. My name is Irma. I'm the founder of Cafecito. And today we have Ryan on the show today for a Coffee Side interview talking about Meta. He's working on this really awesome platform all about learning. And us here at Cafecito, there's a ton of entrepreneurs, a ton of makers, folks that have gigs and freelance gigs as well. So we're all kind of in this space of exchanging knowledge, sharing value, and really helping each other out in terms of progressing in our careers. So I'm super excited to talk to Ryan today. And what I'll do is I'll give Ryan a quick intro and let him give his quick pitch on Meta, and then we'll kind of dive into a few questions about Meta, about learning, and about habits. Ryan, you can give us a quick.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I was waiting for my cue. Awesome.
Oh, no,
Thanks, Emma. I'm super happy to be here. No, I love Cafecito and I love what you guys are doing. Hey, everybody, my name's Ryan. I'm the founder of Meta, and our premise is simple. We just help people transform the way they learn. And I'll leave it at that because I really want to get stuck into the conversations.
Perfect. Great short pitch. Love that. So before we get into like sort of the deeper questions around learning and sort of the habits topics that we're talking about today, can you give us a quick background, who you are, what were you doing before Meta, and why did you start it?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually morning for me, if you can't tell from the light outside. So I'm based in Australia, and I've worked in technology marketing consulting my whole life, mainly for the enterprise space. And actually, like a couple of years back, I was feeling pretty restless. I wasn't feeling like this is exactly what I want to be working on. And then I think I was reaching that point where I started to lose interest in what I was doing. So I actually took some time off. And I moved to Paris in France, and I spent a good year in Paris doing some travel, using it as a bit of a base, as a launching pad to go see other parts of Europe. And while I was there, I did something that I hadn't done in a long time, and I started studying again. And that was really, really interesting because when I was in high school and when I was in university, I was a pretty good student, but I was really studying for one single objective. That was to get like the best marks possible so that I could go get into the careers that I wanted. So I worked really hard. I ended up getting into law school and med school. So I had this like little tough choice of which one to choose. Ended up choosing law school and then going down and also doing a finance degree. But I realized I was never learning because I was particularly interested in the subject. I was learning to try and get me somewhere in life. So when I was in Paris, I was like, for the first time in my life, I had time to just sit and learn for the sake of learning. That was a really new experience. It's going about trying to find your own resources, trying to figure out how to study, trying to figure out, what am I doing well? Am I progressing? What's going on? And that's really hard. So I spent some time actually learning how to learn, and I discovered there's this whole world of science and research and insights of strategies and methods that we can use to help the brain process information and really just encode that into our brain so that we can use it later. And that's where MetaLearn really came about. I was like, this information and these tools need to be out there in a more accessible way so that people can apply it to their own daily lives. And so that's how I got to MetaLearn. We started this year.
Awesome. And I think all the other pieces that you mentioned about your background are probably super beneficial right now as you're starting your own venture with MetaLearn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I've it's funny because you sort of join the dots later, but like having experience in software and with understanding human behavior and starting to then bring that together into your own venture, you become really grateful. It's still a huge learning curve, a massive learning curve.
Just a tiny one. No, totally get you on that front. So in terms of, let's move into communities, and there's a ton of communities right now. Cafecito, where people can brainstorm, have thought-provoking conversations, network. And there's also communities like Intellect, which do something similar in terms of group conversations, right? So having the ability to have a group conversation, again, really dig into our beliefs, our values, et cetera. So how do you see these communities actually influencing how we learn and how we exchange knowledge, not only, today, but also like just long term?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for anyone who truly wants to be self-directed or independent in learning, you need feedback, and you need to understand that you need what you're learning needs to be put out there so that you can get real world feedback from your environment and from people. And I think communities like Cafecito and Intellect are exactly the right places to do that. And there's two reasons for that. So when it comes to sharing in a community, we're talking about the concept of peer learning. It's not a one person up the front and like a lecturer or a teacher sort of dictating to everybody. It's about a community coming together and sharing and learning from each other. And this has two benefits. So this first is that transmission of information. So you've learned something, Irma, and you're willing to share that with me, and your understanding of that will be different to mine. And you'll help me identify things that I've never known about. Or maybe there'll be things that I'll disagree with you about. And so we'll be able to, I'll be able to learn from you and you'll be able to learn from me. And that's a really important, because what that does is that actually gives you a more rounded representation of knowledge in your brain. It's incredibly important to build that sort of rounded concept of knowledge, because it's stickier. It effectively has more neural connections than if you just learn something out of a textbook, and you'll only have a very narrow interpretation of knowledge. So I think there's that transmission of information of benefit, which solidifies understanding. And the second benefit, I think, is we discover together. It's an intellectual discovery process. No person is the one and true master of a single domain or subject. There's this sort of concept of like knowledge belongs in a domain higher than the individual. So like we share this collective knowledge about a subject, and so you need a space to explore that. And when you do, I'm sure everybody has had that moment of feeling like of connection where, oh my God, I'm speaking with someone who's really interested in what I'm interested in. We're exploring new paths together. And it feels really good. It's just like you get excited and you get energized. And those moments don't always happen, but you need to be in a community for them to sort of serendipitously occur. So I think without it, learning's pretty lonely and it's pretty one-dimensional.
Yeah, I agree on that as well. I was actually having a conversation yesterday with Drew from Trends VC, and we ended up having a conversation for one of his like reports that he's working on, and being in front of somebody who like we were just talking about one single topic, but we were just able to dive so deep into all the layers of this specific topic, and it was insane. Like I learned so much. He disagreed with me on some things, I disagreed with him on some things, but like we both came out of it like super pumped and like energized for whatever held next for that day, right? And I think you're speaking on, where you're tapping into is that transmission that you talked about, right? Like that transmission of 2, 3, 4 minds coming together, all from different experiences, different walks of life, different opinions and values, and then being able to, whether you agree or disagree, you're still walking away with some sort of like golden nugget that you didn't have coming in. I think that's why I think meta learn is like so cool, because it provides you with that that ability to keep learning and be like a lifelong learner,
exactly.
right? Which hopefully we all can be, if we have the resources and the ability and the time, right?
Exactly. We want people to be really conscious of that process, to actively take part in the learning, but then also to reflect as you go. One of the most important things about learning is that when you have these moments of clarity or breakthrough, you need to capture that somewhere. Because if you don't, because the brain's it's a little slippery, and things don't stick as easily as we think they should. So you might understand something now, but if I come back to you in 2 weeks' time, and if you haven't actually gone and spent some time to reflect on that, think about what it means to you, to maybe document it, maybe write it down, or explain it in a little podcast or a video, and maybe it's helpful to sometimes record these sessions and these conversations so that you can play it back to yourself. And if we don't do that, it tends to drop away, and that's because of something called the forgetting curve, which was modeled by a professor back in the 1800s, Professor Ebbinghaus, and looked at basically at the moment information comes into our brain, If we don't keep revisiting it, it starts to drop off by 50% within 2 to 3 days. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it sure is. And so I did want to go into as well, just with your experience with meta learning, kind of like building that up from the ground. What has been sort of like your one most surprising insight or takeaway, just on how humans learn that you maybe didn't know before?
Yeah, I think this one was surprising in terms of when I read it, but when I thought about it, it wasn't so surprising after. And it's that when we learn, we choose the techniques that make us feel really good. So what I'm talking about is there are certain learning techniques where when you use them over and over, you get this illusion of like, I'm making really good progress. I'm getting really good at this. Um, but it's an illusion because you're actually not actively engaging with the material or knowledge and creating a mental representation in your brain. And so some of the techniques that I'm talking about are things like making notes or highlighting in a book or rereading. When you do this, what you're doing is actually building familiarity with the material itself. So if you've got a great big textbook and you've copied these, you know, the chapter is 50 pages long, but your notes are like 15 pages long, and you feel really good because they're bolded and they're color coded and you're all really perfectly dot pointed. You've got a great resource for learning now, but that information is actually not in your brain, because what you've done is you've just gone and become really good at taking notes. Actually learning requires you to feel uncomfortable. That's a really that's a concept that we don't like to hear sometimes. It means really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and saying, "Oh, this doesn't feel good." But when it doesn't feel good, it means that your brain is grappling with things that it doesn't understand and it's trying to make sense of them. So that should be your sort of heuristic or your benchmark for what you want to look for when you're saying, "Am I actually learning or getting better at something?" And that was a really interesting thing for me. Yeah, something like for most students, they go to study on about 4,000 university students in I can't remember which state in the USA, and the top 5 techniques that they preferred were the least useful techniques that are known out of all the sort of common study techniques. They were the most least useful techniques ever. The most effective techniques are things like retrieval-based learning. So, testing yourself if you can just retrieve the answer to a question without any aid. Spaced repetition, making sure that you revisit something within sort of regular intervals so that you don't forget it. And then the third is interleaving. So don't just study one single topic or concept in isolation until you think you've got it. It's break it up and chop and change and move things around. What we want to do is we want to make it a little bit difficult, and the term in the business is called desirable difficulties. Make it a little bit difficult for your brain, and that's how you get uncomfortable, and that uncomfort leads you to push and create progress within your learning.
That's great. And going from that thread, like, what would you recommend if folks are looking to build habits on ensuring that they can still remain lifelong learners, or even start being a lifelong learner, right? If you don't consider yourself a lifelong learner, what are some habits that you can start, doing today, to help you in that journey of like learning something every day, or improving your learning techniques, or meeting other folks in communities like the ones that we mentioned, to keep learning and sharing knowledge? What are some habits that you would recommend for folks who are interested in that to start with?
Yeah, so I think the first one, and I'm a little biased, is you need to learn about learning. So learning is a skill, just like many of the other skills that you practice and that you have in your repertoire. If you don't go to the gym or go for a run every 2 weeks or every week or every couple of days, you're immediately going to see that your fitness is going to drop off. You won't be able to run as fast. You won't be able to lift as much weight. You won't be as flexible. So the same concept around being a meta learner or a lifelong learner is being aware of what you're doing and actively taking part in that process to think about, is this working for me? Is this not? Am I being too easy on myself and being too comfortable, or am I pushing myself to learn? So that's one. The second one is you just mentioned it, is you've got to go join a community. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to go join a university or find something as big or as formal as that. It can be exactly like you said, little communities of like-minded people on platforms like Cafecito and Intellect. The point is to find like-minded individuals who are learning about the same things and are passionate about the same things as you are, and regularly checking in with them. And that might be just once a week. You jump on a Zoom call with 4 or 5 other people and you do some readings together, or you talk about something about a language concept together, or set little homework challenges or questions for each other so that you can test understanding. But do that consistently, do that every week. It's an effort, but that's the point. And the last sort of habit I would sort of say is just be curious and look for things. Look at learning about things that interest you. If you're not interested in them, it's just going to be quite difficult to force yourself. So be open to exploring and don't give up too easily. But if you aren't enjoying something, then don't punish yourself and don't force yourself to continue with that.
And great advice. I think the forcing piece is really important to highlight, and finding topics and people, right, that you want to learn from, or that you can teach them something too, is really important. Because that, like you said, the curiosity piece, if you're not engaged, then you're just going to be like, not really there the whole time.
Yeah,
Great
exactly. We
stuff.
all
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
we all have this really big burst of energy at the start of learning something. We're super excited. The first week or two seems really good, but then what happens is sometimes the progress is not as fast as we'd like, or
Mm-hmm.
we don't get as good as quickly as we'd like. Most people drop off at this stage. If you can just push through a little bit and say, trust the process, you put in the effort, you follow the right techniques, and you continually learning and adapting, you're going to make it. But it's going to take a bit of time and require a bit of effort.
Love that. Super cool. Thank you, Ryan. And if folks want to find out more about MetaLearn, where should they check you out, or even your Twitter or LinkedIn, anything like that, for them to take a look at?
Yeah, I'd say just head to www.metalearn.io. We're about to launch our first couple of products over there, so jump on the waiting list, and you can get some insights about how you're learning, but also get access to some really cool tools to understand your learning behavior today, and what you can do to improve, but also a study companion, a study tracker that's going to keep you accountable and encourage you to reflect and get more advice on what types of things you should be doing based on your learning goals and needs.
Amazing. Please go check out Ryan and all the work that he's doing at MetaLearn. It's amazing, and I'm excited to see more lifelong learners come out of your resources and your program. Appreciate you
Thanks,
being
Emma.
here. All right, talk to you soon.
Bye.